Hey there, Pursuing Freedom friends. Thanks as always for tuning in today. We've got a great show for you today. I've got Jay Kinder with us. He's with EXP Realty. He's in the Texas area. He's also one of the founders of the National Association of Expert Advisors, which is a really amazing real estate agent coaching platform, which we're going to dig into. And he's also one of the co-authors of one of the greatest books I've ever read in my career, which was The Miracle Morning for Real Estate Agents, which is a game changer. If you haven't read it, you need to read it. So basically, Jay is a rock star, and I have so excited to just jump right in here because I know he's going to bring us a wealth of knowledge. So with no further ado, Jay, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, for sure.
Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your backstory. Like, when did you get into the industry? What does your journey look like? And we can kind of just go from there.
Right. So, I got into real estate at 19. So I'm 41 now. Got a 21-year-old in real estate. So just to put that in perspective, that's been even more fun and probably more frustrating than it was when I first got into real estate. It was pretty frustrating getting into the business and trying to figure it out, but it's even more frustrating working with him. So, and helping him figure it out. So he's just as hard-headed as me. But so I got into real estate. My dad was in real estate since the year I was born. He got his license, and he was a farmer / real estate agent, believe it or not. Those two went hand in hand, I guess. And he ultimately had a rental management company, and then he bought a Coldwell Banker franchise the year I graduated, right after I graduated high school. And, I did a couple years in college, and I don't think I set any records other than for the most parking tickets ever by any student. And had to find something better to do. At the time I was mowing. I remember when I decided to get into real estate, I was mowing yards for my dad in the summer, and he had rental property. So the ones I got were the ones that were people that got evicted. So the grass was as tall as I was. And I remember one day going in the office and getting my little measly paycheck, and one of the real estate agents had gotten a check for like a little over $5,000, and I was pretty sure he didn't do anything at all that day. And so at that point I was like, well, tell me more about this whole thing. How do you get $5,000? I got like $400 a day, and so I decided. My dad actually sent me to a Dale Carnegie course not long after that, which probably was one of the most helpful things that I could have probably done, just kind of coming out of my shell a little bit and just learning how to, speak in front of people and things of that nature. And met some really good friends, lifelong friends out of that class, but got into real estate not long after that. And, struggled, like I think most people do. I think my dad threw me a bone here and there just to keep me alive and being able to eat. But, eventually I think my first year I sold 22 deals. I think the average sale price was $50,000, to be honest with, that's real. And that's, in the town I was in Lawton, Oklahoma, the average sale price wasn't very high anyways, but there was a whole lot of REO property that no one in the office wanted to mess with. And so I was like, I'll take it. What else have I got to do better than that? So I took all the junk, basically listings, and that's the only reason there was 22, I think. And then, 39 the next year, started figuring some things out, really investing into going to different, if anybody had something for sale, about how to sell more real estate, or did a little class, I was always in it, and started trying to figure it out, and this ultimately, it took a few years, but started to see some success.
Awesome. Well, you touched upon a couple really important things there, which is like, you get in there and you take the junk and you do whatever it takes, and then you get hungry for knowledge and you start taking all the education you can get, because at the end of the day, I see so many people, they get their license and then they sit around and they wait for the business to come to them, and it's like, no, you got to get out there and create your opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
So talk to me a little bit about what your journey looked like in terms of getting from 22 deals of taking whatever you could find to building your own business, your own brand, your own referrals, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, it was an interesting journey. I think, again, going to all these different events. I remember I went to one guy named Roger Butcher that had, he had like a 30-day marketing plan, and it just made sense to me. Like, what is my value proposition to the seller, and how am I going to communicate what I do differently? And he talked about FSBOs and expireds, and I had never really, attempted that. I tried a few different things, but nothing really had worked. And the old FSBO expired thing just worked for me. Going out and getting face to face with people, and I was basically ignorance on fire. I was full of enthusiasm, and a lot of people, I would always ask people if I would win a listing, why did you hire me? Because I think I was just curious more than anything. It was like, why in the
Right.
world would you hire me? And a lot of times it was this, and you just seemed really enthusiastic and like you could really help us. And I love people, and I think that helped a lot, obviously. And I did know the market. I think that was something early on I had to figure it out, and just really trying to understand, like, how do I price a house? How do I really understand what's going on? And doing open houses every Sunday, literally every Sunday I did open house for the longest time. And people that were the frequent open house goers every Sunday in my little community. I got to meet people and get to know people. Got involved in little civic organizations, stuff like that. Just became kind of a part of the community. But ultimately, started having some success on the listing side, which ultimately when you have listings, you get buyers. That tends to be the way things go. And took pretty good care of my clients, and they all seemed to kind of be pretty warmed up to me, and started getting some referrals, and started to kind of take off from there. And it really just exploded after that. From my first, I think my third year, I did 77. It was like 110 or 20, and then it went to like 230, and then 300, and then I got stuck at 300 because I didn't have any systems in place, and everything kind of started to like come to a screeching halt of chaos and commotion. And my best year, I think we did 531 transactions. So it really, and what was it really interesting about my market too was that there was a Remax team still, and they're still there. And they were top 10 in the world for Remax. But when I was selling 500 homes, they were selling 700 homes. So like I felt like I competed with them every single day. Like I was almost always on an appointment against them, and they were commission cutters. So they would always cut their commission if they knew they were competing against me. And so it really made me have to really like hone in my skills of how to articulate my value about why someone should choose me above choosing somebody else. And specifically someone who sold more homes than me and had been in the business longer than me, and had probably sold more homes in that neighborhood than me, probably had a much larger budget than I did for marketing. So all of those things just made the competition was stiff. And I think that's really what helped me become successful, was having a good competitor to have to really understand what they would say about me. How do I articulate myself differently? How do I do a better job than they do? And that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was definitely an uphill battle, but it seemed to grow every year. And I never really hit a plateau until 2007. And then that's when the whole world came crashing down. And that's maybe the second half of the podcast, but it was painful lessons learned going through the downturn of 07 and 8.
Awesome. Yeah, we could probably have a whole nother episode on reliving that time in our lives, right?
Right.
Well, so let me ask you something. When you talk about going from 22 to 39 to 77 and so on, all the way up to 300, and then realizing you didn't have systems in place, at what point did you start hiring people to help you? Because
Yeah.
even 77 is hard to do without the right people around you supporting you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I didn't have a life for most of those years. It was always working, and I didn't really have a problem with it at the time. I was pretty young, so it was okay to be working really hard. And my first, I figured out really quickly there were some things that I wasn't very good at. Paperwork being, anything that was low dollar productive activities, I was not very good at it. And that was fortunate because that was the first thing I delegated. I think that's something that, if you really want to and do well in this business, delegate the things you suck at and the things you don't like doing, and you'll be happy and you'll probably make more money. And so I had done that, not really knowing what I was doing in terms of making my first hire and all of that. But I ended up with, the year I did 233 deals was the first year I hired 3 agents at the end of that year in November. And they hadn't closed anything, that year. So that year I did 233 deals, but I had 4 assistants. I had 2 transaction coordinators, listing coordinator, and then an additional admin that kind of just worked the front desk and kind of managed inbound calls and stuff like that. So that was a lot of admin. I was real heavy on admin, and then I was out in the field a lot. So that was something that was running a course that was not going to be something sustainable for the long haul. And ultimately got some buyer agents on board, and then built a team. Really this was before the Red Book even came out. So like this was before teams were even cool. And I credit a little bit to Craig Proctor. I'd gone through some of his stuff. They had talked about teams and stuff in that environment, and that was probably where I made the decision to hire some agents to come on board. And in fact, I hired one of the agents that I hired, actually sold my company to, but he was one of the guys that went through Dale Carnegie with me, years earlier. So it was kind of cool to get to work with, him in that capacity.
And when you talk about the Red Book, you're talking about the Millionaire Real Estate
Right.
Agent by Gary Keller,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, I just think for anyone who hasn't read that yet, it's
It's a great read.
powerful book.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a dense book, like a textbook, but it's very much a how-to on how to build your business into something where you're the CEO and it's growing and you've got a little life in you.
Right. Right.
So hang on a second. So you did over 230 transactions and you had to show all those properties and sell all those listings. And that
Yeah.
was before you brought on agents. That's
Yeah. Yeah,
incredible.
it was intense for to say the least, and I think it's kind of a blur, but I think I had done. I know what my numbers were. There were 70% listing, 30% buyers. So I wasn't really chasing buyers. I was dealing with the buyers that were right there, ready to do something, and so I wasn't wasting a lot of time with people that will waste your time just by the nature of I wasn't calling those people. Like I wouldn't call in people that didn't call me back. I didn't have time to. And so, that, and the business was continuing to grow. It was really interesting, how fast things seemed to really grow. Now I was investing in marketing too. I mean, I had started doing a lot of things, branded marketing. I was doing full page newspaper ads in the newspaper. No one else was doing that. Then everybody started doing it, doing billboards and things of that nature. And so I was spending the money back in the business. And so that's why I was seeing the growth. But what I didn't realize was, the systems and how important, when you start to delegate certain things, you got to have some systems, and there's best practices and things that you typically do. But if you don't document them, then you really can't teach them. And if you can't document it, then you're just winging it. And so I think in a lot of ways I was winging it and, had to come back and, really put some systems in place over a couple of years to be able to continue to build it.
Well, before we get into that, where you went and built the systems, I kind of want to go back a little bit because you had to have some level of organization to be able to simply manage that number of transactions and have them close successfully and have your business not completely fall apart in the process, right? So, I mean, what did it look like for you to even manage that number of relationships? That's a lot of relationships, and you
Yeah.
said you're a people guy. So, like,
Yeah.
did you have
Yeah.
any kind of like morning
Oh,
routine or daily system that you would
yeah. I mean,
follow?
yeah, I can't remember what year it was I made a transition, but I used to be a night owl, so I would work really late. Being younger, I would go out late on the weekends at times. As I was younger, and so working late wasn't a problem for me. I didn't have a problem working till midnight. And as I made a shift, and I can't remember when it was, but I made a shift to getting ahead of everything in the morning, and that was a real catalyst for me because I got more clarity, and it wasn't it's not like I understood the principles in the Miracle Morning. I wasn't quite that extravagant, but I was at least getting up earlier, prioritizing my day, making a list. And I always made a list, and I still to this day think this is one of the best ways to kind of prioritize is keeping a list of everything that you have, and then putting dollar amounts to what these things are worth. Right, so like a price reduction might be that's worth maybe $6,000 if that house sells. If it doesn't sell, it's not worth anything. It's like all those little things that you're doing, following up with this client. I had, I got to the point where I was doing flips. Well, that might be a $30,000 activity if I get this deal done. So I was getting clear around like, what are the things I'm doing the most valuable things that I'm doing. And I always made sure I was putting those things in the calendar, and really planning my day. Even really, it's pretty crazy actually. I was pretty good at calendaring things into my day. Maybe didn't always follow it, but getting clarity around what was the most important things I needed to do that day was something I was pretty good at. Now I definitely got out of hand, and to a point that my service level went down, and that was what really was the most painful because I had the best of intentions. Like I really genuinely just wanted to help people, wanted people to be happy, but because I would make promises like I'll call you every week on a listing appointment, which is not a good strategy. We evolved that. Once you kind of become a brand in your marketplace, you can kind of evolve you get to set the expectations of the client. And that's when you really get control of your life is when you're able to do that. And I wasn't able to do that early on. I was making lots of promises. And, if I didn't call you that week, I had set myself up for failure. And as I got more and more listings, the days on the market in Lawton was like 120 days. So they don't sell right away. So you got, some decent inventory out there, you need to call them, but you haven't gotten around to it this week or the next week. And then 3 weeks go by and you're like, man, I don't want to call them now. I haven't called them 3 weeks.
Right.
And so it just kind of snowballed on me to a certain point where, I just needed, I needed guidance on how to really get it under control.
Well, it's interesting you say that though about setting the expectation, because I think what happens is, and maybe you can speak to this, is in the early years when you're hungry, you want to be you're servant oriented. Most of us are service
Hmm.
oriented. We want to help people, and so we kind of are yes people to
Hmm.
anyone and
Yep.
everyone who will give us a chance, right? And
Right.
then when you achieve some level of success, it's so hard at that point to put boundaries in place because you
Right.
sort of feel like you built your brand on being available at the drop
Right.
of a hat, right?
Right.
So then it's like, then you feel yourself dropping the ball. That adds to your own stress and anxiety. And then the next thing you know, like you said, it kind of snowballs out of control. So, like, how, what advice can you give to an agent, whether they're coming up or whether they're at that level where they're starting to feel that burnout and they're afraid to set expectations? Like, how did you kind of
Right.
create that for yourself?
Yeah, so I think this, so for me it was just going through the pain of realizing that you cannot overpromise, and underdeliver, and that's just it's unacceptable. So getting to the point where when people would ask me, I knew I couldn't do open houses every Sunday. If you asked me if I could do open houses every Sunday, then I had to say no. And so like that was I think and I knew that open houses wasn't what sold the home, and I never said that to the clients early on, but after a while, I started communicating what I knew to be true. And so, what I know to be true is that listen, I'd be happy to hold an open house, or have one of our agents hold an open house, but to be honest with you, this isn't the number one strategy that we use to get the most exposure and to sell your home for the most amount of money. And in fact, it's really a strategy that we use to meet buyers, and hopefully find a buyer that will buy something, because a high percentage of the time, probably 90+% of the time, the buyer's not going to come to us from an open house. Probably more like 99% chance that it's not going to come from an open house. So that strategy, while I understand that you'd love to have open and you're motivated to get the home sold, is not something that that I would be able to promise that we're going to do, because I don't know that that's in your best interest. Your best interest is in having us, work the leads that we're generating, and work the systems, and the internet leads, the things that we're utilizing to get exposure for the home, and be showing homes on the weekends, as opposed to just sitting over here kicking out of your house for half the day. So that I had to get to a point where I was comfortable saying that, and for me, I just needed to know. I had to learn the hard way that that wasn't the best way. And so as I learned better ways, then I was able to communicate that. And then when it came down to communication, which was the biggest threat to your business, is lack of communication to your clients, and not doing a really good job there. Was we ultimately got to the point where I delegated the communication aspect up until 30 days on the market. So listen, I'm not going to call you every week. We're going to get showings. If you have questions, you can call Carla in the office. She'll handle that, and she's better than me at this. So if you need me, this is my cell phone. You can call me anytime. But in 30 days, we're going to review everything that's come on the market, everything that's sold, everything that's gone under contract, and we're going to determine if we've priced and positioned the home accurately, or if the market's telling us something different. And then my favorite phrase that I would use is, we're not testing the marketing that we do to sell homes. We're testing the price of your home in the marketplace. Do you understand? And once they said yes to that, there was no more discussion. And it didn't happen until later on, but like I had 200 plus listings. When they're not sell, when you have 200, like it ballooned from like 130 to 200 as the market started to shift, and then we were chasing the market downhill, and there was just no systems in place for making sure you're getting a price adjustment, reviewing the market, and all of that. It wasn't a system. It would happen. Okay, why in this one sold? Okay, well, let's go look at it, or let's get on the phone with the seller. Or actually what would happen is they would bring down my expireds a month before they would expire, and they would lay them on my desk, and it was my job to call them and get them to relist, and that never worked very well. So I was waiting till way too long in the process to address the fact that we probably didn't position the home right, and should have been have been talking about this earlier. So those are just things that I kind of learned as I went, and as it got worse and worse, it became very clear the system was broken and needed to be fixed.
Well, I really appreciate your candor here. And before I even ask you the next question I have and dig into the next thing, I just think that you're speaking to something that is really real, really real. Is that good English? Not really, but
Right.
it's real, right? And
Right.
I think it speaks to one of the biggest fears that a lot of people have, which is my level of service going to be compromised? And sometimes people have that fear around bringing team members on. Like,
Mhm.
if I bring someone on, it's not me. Is my level of service going to be compromised? Well, if you
Right.
don't bring someone on and your business grows because you're
Right.
amazing, guess what? Your level of service is going to be compromised.
Yep.
What is your experience if you can look back with hindsight to speak to the idea that, because we've never really discussed this on the show, but there are going to be times in your business that things just don't go well and you have to pick up the pieces and sort of reinvent. What can you say to that for people that are sort of terrified of bringing on people because they're afraid that their level of service will be compromised or whatever the case might be? Like, what is your experience with that perspective of having had it ramp up and then crack and break and then ramp up again and over
Right.
again?
Yeah, there was one point where it was pretty rough, and it was really deflating because I was like, man, dang it, man, like I really want to do well for all my clients, but I was missing the ball, and I was missing it in a bigger way than I knew because I had a bad hire. So if you add a bad hire to the mix, which is, by the way, that's the biggest mistake you can make is a bad hire. Now, I don't want to scare anybody from making a hire because that shouldn't be a good enough reason for you to not make a hire because it will change your life, giving you some freedom, having some support. But one bad hire that was hiding a lot of the communication for me, and I wasn't able to see kind of what was going on. And surprisingly, yeah, she did a really good job of just keeping it under under the rug, and didn't know about it for a long time. But the best thing you can do is start thinking about um, what's the process and how are you going to hold someone accountable, and that's it. And then there should be some kind of measurement of success there. Ultimately, those systems were all put in place. Like, I didn't start with that. Had I done that, I would have had a clear understanding of, this is what success looks like. This is a scoreboard for you, and that person's going to do that job. And I was not a good micromanager, which was what also allowed some of this to happen. But had I been the same type of leader without, with the good measurements and a scoreboard, and clarity about what they were doing and how it impacted the overall business, it would have been a lot, that getting clear on that, before just hiring someone, and making sure that you understand, well, here's the skills they need and here's what they need to be able to do and they need to be good at, and giving them some type of test to make sure they can. Like, those are all these things that are fundamentally, if you're going to hire people, you have to do. And I did none of that. But I would say, if you take that time to get really clear about what it is that they're going to be doing, or what interfacing they're going to have with the clients that you have, and then what does success look like with that, and how are you going to measure it, and how are you going to reward that behavior as well, is really, it's not as scary and daunting, and as bad as it went, it didn't kill my business. My business just continued to grow, leaps and bounds every year, and so doubling and doubling and doubling is a good thing to see in your business. It's really pretty exciting. But there are times when that, man, that client, I made a promise and I didn't deliver on it, and that always comes back on you, and you always know that you could have done better. And so I think that's just where it just forces you to level up and become better. It did for me. So I wouldn't be afraid to try to grow fast, but I would just be hyper aware that you don't want to lose the relationship, because the lifetime value of your client base is everything in your business. You want to make raving fans, and that has to be the focus.
Yep. Well, you touched upon something really important there, which is the idea that you had a way of doing things that ultimately led to your massive success. And that way of doing things probably lived in your head, and it
Mhm.
wasn't on paper, and it wasn't really a well defined system with tracking and all that other stuff.
Right.
So, what is your advice to somebody who's in that place where their business has taken off, they're working till midnight every night, and their response to you need to hire somebody is, I need to first get myself organized. And it's like, well, do you
Yeah.
hire
So
someone to organize you, or how does
yeah,
that work?
yeah, you do. The right answer here, in my opinion, is making the key hire, and hiring someone that can help build the process. Right.
Yeah.
So, like that, because if you go try to build the process, you'll never do it because it's never going to be the priority. And it's just easier and faster for me to do it myself, is what you'll say. Is this what we all say when we get to that point? But if you hire that right person, and for me, it felt like, it was an operational hire, and they were just better at, they were, if I'm pitching, they were catching, and that was just a really good dynamic. And it's an operator is really kind of, there's a couple different books out there. The Integrator, from what is it? Traction, the book Traction. The Integrator is a really good person in that role. There's another book called I'm looking at my library over here. What was it called? It's Les McCowan. He has one called the Synergist, and that's actually where the test is. But it's like visionary and um, operator, which is like a get shit done person, and then processor, which is somebody who's like trying to like, can we build a process here around all this because it's chaos everywhere. And then it's a synergist, kind of someone that can kind of really work with anybody in the company. And so like, but somebody that can, a good operator can help you build a process, but someone with at least a little bit of processor mindset to build to follow you around and document the process is such a valuable tool, because there's so many things that you want to get done, and you need somebody to be documenting and creating that stuff. If you're a visionary, that's really a super helpful hire to have, a sidekick to have on your side. But yeah, don't wait to get that hire. If you hire them and then have them help you, you're hiring them as part of the process is to document your process. Even if you don't know what it is, they'll help you figure it out. So that's always worked really, really well to continue kind of moving forward and not being stuck. So I think part of the reason I didn't get stuck is that's how I handled that. Was I would hire people, and when I needed them to help build systems, I gave them the freedom to do that, and then bring it to me, and I'll help you get it from 80% to 100%. Was a lot of the kind of the way I thought about it.
I love that. That's awesome. So, I mean, you're obviously giving already so much value here that I'm sure the listeners are eating up. And I guess my next question is that obviously your experience inspired you to want to help others. And so when did you guys launch the National Association of Expert Advisors?
Yeah, so that was so in 2006 we had really kind of coached and bought everything in the real estate industry you could buy, and I was still very much stuck in my business. I had some better systems and stuff in place, but I wasn't getting any more free. It didn't feel like. And so we spent from about 2006 to about 2011 also going through the downturn and the midst of all of that, really trying to nail the business model. And so as we we went through the rough water of 07, 08, climbed through that, nailing the financial model, because there's not one. Nobody teaches you how to run a business. It's missing. It's like, you can go listen to all the gurus, but Buffini teaches referrals. That's one pillar in the business. Proctor teaches, direct response marketing. That's a pillar in the business. And Mike Ferry taught, prospecting. That's a pillar in the business. But there really wasn't like a holistic business approach that I could find anyways. I mean, I was putting all the pieces together as fast as I could, but there wasn't anybody really teaching that. So we went kind of outside the industry, went to a guy by the name of Jay Abraham, was one of our best mentors that we've ever had. And, he was kind of our strategic mindset guy that helped us, with thinking about, hey, how would you partner with agents, and what would that look like? And what would you need to provide to them so that they could have that kind of success without all the struggle, ideally. But there always will be struggle. So, there's no, there's a shortcut to success, but there will always be failure on the way to success.
Mm-hmm.
That is a given I've learned in my life, and it's okay. Right. Like, you can't swing the pendulum to success. It has to swing first to failure, and then it'll swing to success. And the further you swing to failure, the further it'll swing to success. And so, being okay with that you're going to have setbacks, and that's just part of the process is a big part of it. But we created the National Association of Expert Advisors because the number one problem that we had with most agents that came to us doing like 25 or 30 deals was they had most of them had some past clients that loved them. None of them knew how to acquire a customer through marketing. So, if you want to break through from anything under 30 deals, you're going to have to learn how to acquire a customer through marketing. Meaning they're going to have to be people that don't already know, like, and trust you. Mm. And so that's a breakthrough that's really hard for people. And they spend a lot of money, because we make a lot of money in real estate. You spend a lot of money trying a lot of different things, but there's I mean, it's the biggest learning curve. It's harder. It's probably one of the hardest things to learn is how to understand marketing, how to communicate your message to the marketplace, reach and frequency, and all the ways that you can do that result in people picking up the phone and calling you and saying, hey, I want to buy a house from you, or I want to sell a home through you. So that was the reason we created NAEA, was because we had kind of documented our systems, then branded it, and then we would train you and certify you as a certified home selling advisor, certified home buying advisor, give you all the tools of the marketing. Here's what you send out. Here's the ads you run, all that kind of stuff. So it had to be duplicatable, because if it wasn't, then we were going to be able to help partner with agents and help them grow their business successfully, like we had done for ourselves. And so that was it took a long time to build all that, but that was the process that we went through over the years, and figured it out eventually.
So now is the National Association of Expert Advisors, is that now a one-to-one coaching platform, or is it an event? Is it mostly events? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, it's training. I think everyone needs coaching. If you want the shortcuts to success, I mean, there's really just a framework for decision making that you need in your business. And right now, you either have clarity on like where you're at and what their next step is, or there's just like priority confusion. And you can continue to take steps, but you're going to be taking a lot of steps backwards, and that's generally what happens. And so, like, just kind of understanding the framework of like, how do you make a decision? How do you decide? Do I make this hire? Do I go spend this money here? But until you kind of download that framework for strategic planning, is what I would really call it. Once you have that, then you don't need a coach, because now you have a process for how you make decisions. But until you do, you need a coach to get you kind of in the understand the framework and helping you think through what are all the ways. And one of the analogies I always use the reason Jay Abraham as a mentor was so valuable is because, like, I think we're kind of like fish, and we understand what's below the surface of the water, but we don't really know what's above the water because that's not a place that we've ever been. And when you have a mentor that's been way above where you've ever been, it's something you've never seen before. There are so many more ways to accomplish a goal than you may have ever even dreamed about.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been true for me at every level that I've been at when I meet people that are way above me. And so Abraham was just a really good mentor for us because he'd been in 400 different industries. I mean, there's literally, companies that, run 100% of their business from newspaper ads still to this day. How do you adapt, adopt, and apply that to our real estate business? So there's so many ways that you can do things. It just helps to have someone that has seen most of that or a lot of that to help you see things that maybe you would have never even thought to do. So that's where good mentorship and coaching comes into play, I think, and is extremely valuable. Now, what we provide Navy SEAL training for real estate agents. I mean, you come out trained like an assassin, knowing that if I'm going to get face to face with someone, I'm going to win. And knowing how to win and knowing what to say and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that's out there that's pretty good. But what we just saw that was a missing thing and missing in the industry was, there's just nobody that built a system with a value proposition. Like, for instance, we have a proven repeatable system backed by market research to sell homes for up to 18% more than the methods of traditional real estate agents. Would you like for me to show you how we do that? Like, that is just articulating your value. Once you get the marbles out of your mouth, you can set a whole lot more appointments just by saying that versus saying whatever most people are saying today. It's like all of those little systems and training and it goes from not just articulating the value, but all the way to delivering on the value, and then making sure you're getting those testimonials and you're using that stuff in your marketing and all that kind of stuff, and it all kind of goes hand in hand. But there just was nothing like that. The consumer, we manage the consumer relationship, not the real estate company that we're at. So there's really kind of been little value to the brokerage across, when I was a Coldwell Banker, there was good company, but sorry, Dad, not buying it. We're going on independent. Why? Because I was paying them $100,000 a year. At the peak. And so, because they don't manage the consumer relationship, when I left, they all came with me, every one of my clients. And so once you realize that, no company is going to give you this piece of the business, that you have to learn this piece and articulate it and be able to learn how to do that. That was what we saw was missing. And in order for us to truly help agents, to just got to the point where we could help a lot of agents be successful by just sheer force. But like, there was the piece that was done for you that was missing, and that training that was missing, that if we got you through that, I could take a brand new agent and I could have you competing against one of the top agents in your marketplace, and you'd have a really good chance to win. And so like, that was just our passion, was helping people that wanted to be successful. So it just, as we continued to iterate, that was ultimately the systems, tools, marketing pieces, magazine tear sheets, where the positioning of you looking at like an expert, all of those pieces are just things that have been proven to work. Dan Kennedy, another mentor of ours that we followed, and Frank Kern, some of those guys, just we basically adapted the things that they taught and put it in place for real estate agents.
Perfect. And so what are the events that you guys are hosting nowadays?
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, so there's a good chance that we may be coming to your market at some point. We probably do 100 events travel wise between myself, Michael Reese, Al Stasic, and some of the group that's been with us for a long time that teach some of these events. And then in Dallas is where we do most of our events, 3-day events. There's 2 big ones that we do: the Agent to CEO, which is primarily for someone who's doing about 40 deals plus and is really starting to run against the they're hustling out there every day, and you're putting in a tremendous number of hours. And then, kind of if you're stuck and you can't quite get over the hump of 30, the agent boot camp that we do is the foundation of everything that we teach. And it's kind of the first thing you should probably be introduced to if you're going to do anything with this. But that happens. You can go to kinderreescoaching.com, I think kinderreescoaching.com /events, or kinderrees.com /events, something like that. And the events for the year, we don't have 2020 lined up yet. We're still working through that, but we still have one in December of this year that we'll be doing. So
awesome. So one of the things I forgot to ask you about is I think you also have a podcast too, don't you?
Yeah. So yep, we sure do. Yeah. Face-to-face podcasts. And it's face-to-face with Jake Hinder and Michael Reese, and it's it's probably some of our best content. This has been a great interview. I've been enjoyed the time we had prior to getting on, and as we've been talking through this. But I think we try to put our best content on the podcast, not really like purposely, but just because like that's when we start talking and get into like a topic, or we go real deep with it sometimes. So I think there's a lot of value there. If they're listening to podcasts and they like you and they like this interview, I would say that that's probably going to be something that they'll get a lot of value out of.
Awesome. So Kinder Reese Coaching, and then you've got the face-to-face podcast. And then how else can folks find you and follow you and absorb some more of this amazing knowledge that you've shared with us today?
I appreciate it very much. Go to jakehinder.me. So, you can just Google me. You'll probably run into something. But jakehinder.me is kind of a catch place. You can schedule a call with me if you like to. I'm happy to help people with their business. It's what I'm passionate about. So several ways to get in my calendar there. Lots of videos, links back to YouTube training stuff we've got out there. So, yeah, that'd probably be the easiest way to get me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today, Jay.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
It's been awesome. So guys, as always, I implore you, if you're enjoying the content here, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and leave a review. Just scroll down, look for the little pencil, tell everybody how awesome it is so we can keep attracting great guests like Jay and help people find this awesome content to keep you going on your journey. I love and appreciate you as always. Make it an awesome day.